Welcome to my channel. If you've enjoyed watching one or two of our videos and haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button now for more captivating stories like this. Don't miss a single story. In the year 2035, advancements in technology led to the creation of the world of Connect. This virtual realm was as realistic as the real world, featuring perfectly natural NPCs, impressive swordsmanship, and magical abilities that players could only experience within the game. These elements attracted over 100 million people to the world of Connect. Later, a large group of people lay dead in front of the gate as a man screamed in pain, struck by daggers that pierced his body. He fell lifeless to the ground in front of onlookers who witnessed the event. Bae Do-yun, known by his in-game name, Crash, was the individual responsible for causing this situation. The attackers referred to Do-yun as a bastard and an enemy of the Empire. Urged by one of their group, they charged at him since he was alone. Despite the imminent danger, Do-yun remained calm, his rank as the 13th psychokinetic in his class displayed on the system. One of the men aimed an arrow at him, shouting for him to die. However, with a simple gesture, Do-yun raised his two fingers and deflected the arrow, causing it to decapitate another man. The leader commanded his knights to fire arrows, but Do-yun effortlessly stopped them mid-flight, leaving the knights astonished. In a display of his formidable abilities, Do-yun hurled the arrows back at the knights, prompting their leader to order them to dodge. Unfortunately, the other knights were unable to evade the incoming projectiles, resulting in their demise. Do-yun skillfully wielded his dagger, swiftly attacking the leader and causing him to bleed from the neck. He then approached the remaining knights, who cursed him for his powerful psychokinetic skills and questioned the source of his overpowered abilities. Noticing something above them, one of the knights became horrified as he saw a suspended weapon in the air. Do-yun aimed the weapons at the knights, who cursed their fate, aware of the impending danger. With a lowering of his hand, the weapons flew directly at the knights, leaving them no chance to escape. Leaving behind a trail of dead knights, Do-yun made his way into the castle. Inside the castle, as he surveyed his surroundings, Do-yun wondered about the significance of what he had encountered. Suddenly, he heard someone coughing beside him, and to his surprise, it was the Pope who revealed that it signaled the end. Do-yun fixated on the Pope's pendant, realizing it was the object he had been searching for. The Pope explained that God had foretold the arrival of saviors to their world. Reaching out to grasp the Pope's necklace, Do-yun found his hand tightly held, as the Pope questioned why there were only fighters present, why chaos had been brought upon the world, and why cities had been burned, innocents killed, and people enslaved. Disregarding the Pope's concerns, Do-yun claimed the necklace, referring to the Pope as an old man, and shifted the blame onto the guild that had colluded with the Empire. The sound of footsteps outside indicated the arrival of latecomers from the guild, causing Do-yun to curse his luck. He ascended the stairs, with the Pope warning him not to forget that everything would unfold as God had intended, and that everyone involved would pay for their actions. In front of him stood a large box with a hole in the center. Do-yun slowly placed the pendant into the hole, triggering a magical light that revealed an underground passage. As he descended into the passage, memories of the gathered intel flooded Do-yun's mind. However, his thoughts were interrupted by the sight of a book and other objects floating in a mystical purple light. It became clear to him that these were the very first mythical items in the world of Connect. 5 years ago, Do-yun became aware of the collusion between major guilds and the Empire, which resulted in the destruction of the world. He had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment, knowing that the guilds now controlled Connect. As the only remaining solo player in the top 100, he understood the importance of securing the items he had obtained before others arrived. He decided to place them in his inventory, aware that the guilds would be furious if they discovered he had acquired them first. While preparing to leave, Do-yun noticed an object on the table that resembled a game cartridge. Curiosity compelled him to pick it up, questioning why it was there. Suddenly, he felt a strong pressure emanating from the cartridge, causing him pain and panic. He speculated if it was a connection error and logged out immediately. Upon waking up in his room, Do-yun sat up abruptly, only to discover a stab wound near his chest. Someone instructed him to stop moving, and he cursed internally, realizing that things had taken a turn for the worse. Suited men, including their president, confronted him, questioning his movements and instructing him to die peacefully. Do-yun condemned them as trash, believing they had gone too far in the real world. Do-yun's captors revealed that they had captured him and inquired if they should bring him alive to their president. When their president ordered them to kill Du-yun and retrieve his head, he pleaded for his life, recognizing the absurdity of being killed over a game. Fearful for his survival, Du-yun begged them not to kill him, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. One of the men covered his face and raised a blade, preparing to deliver a fatal blow. As the man repeatedly stabbed him, Du-yun contemplated the madness of killing people over a game, questioning if this was how he would meet his end. Suddenly, someone urgently called out to him, addressing him as, "Sir," and urging him to wake up. Filled with panic, he sat up, bewildered by the sudden turn of events. Confused and disoriented, he examined his hand and looked around, trying to make sense of what had just transpired. He recalled the sensation of dying after being stabbed. Beside him, a maid named Anna expressed concern for his well-being, referring to him as Raul. Du-yun was puzzled by the mention of Raul but was more taken aback by the level status displayed above Anna, indicating she was level 3. She asked if she should call a doctor, as he had broken into a cold sweat. Overwhelmed and uncertain of the situation, Du-yun felt like he was witnessing something he shouldn't have been able to. A system notification appeared, informing him that his soul had settled and activating Connect's closed beta system. He now had access to the user interface, and he was the only user currently in the game. This realization struck him with panic as he questioned whether it was all a joke and contemplated his role as the sole user in this world. Standing on his room's balcony, Du-yun experienced the sensations of wind in his surroundings, a stark contrast to his previous experiences with Connect. He understood that his synchronization level, the connection strength with Connect, determined his power in the game. Normal players typically had around 30% synchronization, but he possessed close to 90%. He had held the rank 1 position for 10 years until the major guilds emerged, but he now recognized that he no longer inhabited his previous body. Though he felt unlucky for the time he had invested in leveling up that body, he also realized the unique opportunity presented by the closed beta and being the sole user in this world. At that moment, as he raised his hand, he made a surprising discovery. Despite being in the closed beta, he could still access his inventory. Utilizing his scanned user information, the system detected locked user data and swiftly updated his information. The system promptly provided him with the necessary details, and he formulated a plan to leverage his knowledge and powers from his previous life to reclaim his position at the top. Enduring the pain, he observed that his current name was Rul Ashton, the youngest son of the 5th Count of the Reuben Kingdom's Ashton County. Recalling the events that unfolded in Connect, he remembered that Ashton County was one of the orthodox families in the Reuben Kingdom. The Count and his eldest son had mysteriously died, while the second son had gone missing. As a result, a coup took place after the youngest son inherited the county. During these chaotic times, the barrier of the Forbidden Area had shattered, leading to a failed attempt to repel the monster invasion. Now, he realized that he embodied the role of the youngest son. Gazing ahead, he foresaw the destruction of the beautiful city he currently beheld within the next 3 years. Entering his room, he resolved that he could not allow this tragedy to occur, as he no longer possessed the identities of B. Dohan or Crash in this new life. He recognized that this was his final chance to alter the course of events. Clenching his fist, he acknowledged the suffering he had endured living as Bon. Missing the opportunity to relive that life would be too disheartening. Noticing the sword resting on the table, he understood that there was only one way to avert the impending downfall: he had to become stronger. He comprehended that in a month's time, Ashton County's traditional coming-of-age ceremony would commence. If he managed to advance to the semifinals, he would have the opportunity to enter the Kingdom Academy and further strengthen himself to protect his life. However, just as he contemplated his path, he suddenly collapsed onto the floor, bewildered by the intense fatigue washing over him after a mere few swings. Observing his current level of 5, he realized he was 2 levels behind the maid, indicating the urgency to commence his training immediately. A month later, the day of the tournament arrived, and he marveled at the multitude of participants. Surveying the crowd, he comprehended that he would have to face these individuals in combat. Recalling his coach's advice, he acknowledged that despite feeling exhausted after what seemed like only 10 minutes, it was likely due to the pain he endured during the past month to qualify for the tournament. Glancing at the system, he recollected that he had reached level 13, and his stamina was fully prepared. Equipped with a plan for the matches, he possessed confidence in his ability to reach the semifinals. Suddenly, he sensed an attack from behind and swiftly evaded it, causing the strike to impact the ground instead. Surprised by the presence of a fist behind him, he heard the man apologize, claiming his hand had slipped. The man addressed him as a precious noble and inquired if he was participating in the tournament. Remembering the man's name as Dion and recognizing the individuals accompanying him as his cousins, Raul remained silent. It dawned on Raul that Dion had previously bullied him during their swordsmanship training, sanctioned by the instructor and the count, who believed in training as if it were real and treating everyone as equals on the training ground, absolving any responsibility for injuries sustained during training. This revelation solidified Dion's status as a scoundrel who took advantage of those weaker than him. Dion approached Raul, advising him to withdraw from the tournament while he still had the chance. He warned Raul that the consequences would be severe and vowed to break every bone in his body this time. Mocking him, Dion instructed his cousins to let Raul pass, confident that Raul would cry once again. Laughing, Dion walked away, leaving Raul determined to defeat him in the finals at Ashton's castle. Meanwhile, in the castle, a man received a tournament report from the butler. Curious if there were any noteworthy participants, the man asked about Raul's whereabouts. The butler informed him that Raul had returned to his room after finishing his meal. Thinking that Raul had exhausted himself during the qualifiers, Count Melvin Ashton, Raul's father, dismissed the butler. Melvin laughed proudly, proclaiming Raul as his son because he had successfully reached the group stage. Despite Raul's initial weakness compared to his brothers, Melvin had never forced him to learn swordsmanship. However, Raul had taken it upon himself to train for a month prior to the tournament. Melvin recognized that Raul had been bullied during training, but he also saw Raul's progress and decided to wait until Raul could stand up for himself. The day of the finals arrived, and the audience urged the participants to make the match exciting and not prolong it. The man facing Raul grew frustrated as Raul managed to block all of his attacks. Despite his exhaustion, Raul skillfully avoided getting hit and the man became increasingly angry. In a fit of rage, the man launched a powerful attack, demanding that Raul go down. However, Raul slid backward to create distance, shocking the audience. Spectators noted that Raul had endured the man's attacks multiple times and wondered how much more he could take. Some voiced their support for Raul, further infuriating the man. The man swung his sword furiously at Raul, insultingly calling him a rat and challenging him to run away forever. Yet, Raul parried each of the man's attacks with precision. The man questioned if Raul felt any shame as a member of a count's family, but Raul teased him, claiming he couldn't hear him well. Raul continued to block the man's strikes while maintaining his composure. As the man swung again, Raul parried the attack once more. The onlookers addressed the man as Edmund, urging him to finish Raul and expressing their impatience as the match had dragged on. Edmund grew serious, declaring that he was done playing around. He unleashed his power, forming a mana sword, and warned Raul that he was going to end it. The audience gasped in shock at the sight of the mana sword and cautioned Raul to dodge it, as being hit would surely lead to defeat. Edmund swung his water-powered skill at Raul, commanding him to die. To his surprise, Raul remained standing, perplexing Edmund as to why Raul wasn't dodging the attack. Undeterred, Edmund launched another attack at Raul, resulting in a loud explosion that erupted in the center of the arena. The audience was left stunned as the smoke slowly dissipated. The referee intervened, standing in the center and announcing that the match was over, declaring Raul as the winner. Half of the audience cheered for Raul, while the other half couldn't believe that he had emerged victorious. Edmund threw his sword aside and approached Raul in disbelief, questioning how Raul could be the winner. He was about to explain that he would have won if the match had continued, but the referee interrupted him, calling him foolish. The referee pointed out that if the match had continued, Edmund would have met his demise. Realizing that Raul had not been standing still but had been aiming for his neck, Edmund collapsed to the ground in fear. Raul approached him, mentioning that they would need to have a discussion about his disrespect toward the county after the tournament. Later, when Raul arrived back at the castle, a servant respectfully told him to rest well. However, as soon as the door shut behind him, Raul couldn't contain his excitement and shouted in happiness because he had actually won. With a smile, he opened his status and saw an update. The level of his Ashton swordsmanship mastery had increased to beginner level 9. Proudly, he realized that his plan had worked. By battling stronger opponents and utilizing the game's feature of gaining more experience points and mastery, Raul had successfully leveled up. His plan involved taking advantage of the game's hardcore mode, which offered high risk and high return with an experience multiplier and the removal of the revive option. Examining his status, Rul acknowledged that he had complained earlier but now saw his progress. He was currently level 19 in hardcore mode with classes in swordsmanship and psychokinesis. His affiliation was Ashton County, and his title was Ashton County's youngest son. His attributes included Strength 22, Agility 25, Stamina 19, Intelligence 15, Willpower 34, Mana 29, Spiritual Power 35, and Senses 30. Rul possessed unique traits such as Psychokinetic Meister S+, Royal Lineage, and other yet unknown traits. He understood that further traits would unlock as he continued to level up, and he decided to test them in his upcoming tournament matches. As the tournament days arrived, Rul achieved victory in every match, displaying fair and clean gameplay. The audience couldn't believe that the youngest son of Ashton had made it to the grand finale, speculating on how it could be possible. Some wondered if he was lucky or using some kind of trick, but Rul knew that early-stage civilians were unaware of the player's powers. Upon returning to the castle, he contemplated keeping his ability to use psychokinesis a secret until the right moment. He had confidence in his acting skills to conceal it. However, his thoughts were interrupted by a knock on his door, and a person named Ivan introduced himself. He invited Ivan inside, and Ivan expressed concern about his well-being, asking if he was injured. He reassured Ivan that he was perfectly fine and mentioned the presence of a priest and healer on standby. Ivan placed a hand on his shoulder and advised him not to let his guard down, reminding him that there were wounds that couldn't be healed. He acknowledged Ivan's genuine worry but noted that he wasn't accustomed to such feelings in his past life. He then asked Ivan about the matter he had inquired about. Ivan handed him a document confirming that he had fulfilled his request. Ivan inquired if he was sure about it and was about to mention Dion, but he interrupted Ivan, telling him not to worry because he was confident he would win. Ivan respectfully bowed to him, expressing his trust, and then left the room. He walked away, reflecting that his confidence resembled Melvin's when he was younger. However, he knew that the final opponent would be Dion, who brutally wounded his opponents. Meanwhile, he examined the document, contemplating its value as it was related to Ashton County's betting system, which supported participants in the tournament. Placing the document on the table, he believed that it was enough to secure his place in the family, and all that remained was to defeat Dion. The host's voice echoed, announcing the beginning of the final match. He faced Dion, and in the audience, half cheered for him, urging him to win with his skills. On the other hand, the other half warned him to be prepared to be beaten by Dion. Dion called him a weakling and taunted him, saying he didn't know how he made it that far, but he would make sure that he considered it his worst decision to come up there. Dion also threatened him, saying that with people cheering, he would soon find out how worthless he is, and it would be a nice view when he starts crawling with his limbs cut off. However, he simply yawned in response and asked Dion if he was done stretching his tongue. Dion clenched his fist in anger and released a powerful violet aura, calling him arrogant. The audience realized that the aura was overwhelming mana and that Rul was no match for Dion. He, however, believed that Dion was acting tough because he noticed that Dion's level was 42 with the class of an expert knight, specializing in swordsmanship. Dion's affiliation was Ashton County, and his title was Ashton County Star and Sword Genius. Dion's stats included potential talent grade B, Strength 52, Agility 41, Stamina 43, Intelligence 18, Willpower 14, Mana 32, and Senses 21. He concluded that Dion's potential talent was only B and that Dion might look impressive now, but it was Dion's limit. The host shouted that the match had begun, and Dion angrily told him that he would kill him, calling him a coward. He swiftly jumped toward Dion and appeared above him, surprising Dion. He swung his sword down to attack Dion, but Dion managed to block it. They both exerted their utmost effort to not let their swords down first, but then he forcefully swung his sword down, causing Dion to slide back to avoid it. Dion angrily questioned why he hadn't hit him. He skillfully blocks Dion's sword, realizing that he can clearly see Dion's sword movements. In a swift move, he trips Dion using his feet, causing Dion to fall face first to the ground. In the midst of this action, he contemplates that a sword skill without practical experience is referred to as the generic nobleman's sword. He is aware that Rul was bullied by Dion in the past. Dion questions if he tripped him and releases his powerful aura again, threatening to kill him. However, he remains calm and gracefully shifts his body to the left, pondering if Dion's expertise is limited to swordsmanship and an abundance of mana flowing through his body. The audience is astonished as they witness him effortlessly disarm Dion's sword. With his blue and black aura emanating, he points his sword at Dion and declares that the situation is boring. He further asserts that Dion is nothing after all, provoking Dion's anger. Undeterred by Dion's rage, Dion charges towards him to attack, but he easily sidesteps and trips Dion once again. Mockingly, he remarks on Dion's anger issues and how he repeatedly falls for the same trick. Dion rolls around on the ground while he calmly advises Dion to reflect on himself, expressing disappointment in Ashton County's name. Dion, fueled by fury, charges at him once more, but he delivers a powerful punch to Dion's face. Dion stumbles and collapses to the ground, leaving the audience in disbelief that he was defeated so swiftly by Rul. He informs the referee that his opponent is down and questions if the match will continue. The referee announces to everyone that Rul Ashton is the winner of the Ashton Coming of Age tournament. The audience erupts in cheers and celebration, expressing their belief in him and continuously chanting his name. As he stumbles, he realizes he is happy to have won but acknowledges his poor stamina, causing concern among his supporters who promptly call for a healer. Suddenly, the system interface appears, displaying that he has completed the Coming of Age tournament quest and earned rewards of 300 experience points, coins, and a random skill book of grade E or lower. Additionally, he receives extra rewards of 5 grade D stat points, experience points, and a random skill book of grade D or lower. While the healers attend to him, he contemplates that now he can make it to the Kingdom Academy. Who had been observing, expresses his pride in Raul's accomplishments and growth within a month. However, Melvin remains silent, realizing that Rul had toyed with Dion. Melvin understands that if Rul had truly achieved so much in such a short time, Rul is a genius. Raul's thoughts are interrupted when he spots Melvin. Rul calls him father, and waves, believing that Melvin was watching. Rul assumes that Melvin knows he is now qualified to attend the academy, but Melvin merely gazes at him quietly. Later, in the castle, Melvin informs him that he cannot allow Rul to go to the academy. This surprises Rul, and he asks why. Melvin explains that based on what he observed, Rul needs to stay by his side for a longer period. Melvin also mentions that Rul collapsed after the match, indicating the need for Rul to remain there a little longer. Rul counters by stating that he thought he could go to the academy as long as he made it to the semifinals. However, Melvin clarifies that it was a situational decision. Rul argues confidently that he is determined to go to the academy to learn more, just as he had previously expressed. Rul asserts that Melvin cannot stop him, leaving Melvin stunned. However, Melvin's expression transforms into a smile as he realizes Rul has truly grown. Melvin rises from his seat, informing Rul that if he truly wishes to go, he must surpass Melvin first. With a display of his strong aura and aiming his sword at Rul, Melvin declares that he won't go easy on him. Melvin then asks Rul, "What are you going to do now?" A month later, a large group of knights followed behind the carriage, and inside, he felt relieved to finally be out. However, he remembered the moment his father stopped him and accepted it, confidently asserting that it was his own choice. He charged at Melvin, but Melvin playfully questioned if that was all he had. With a swing of his sword, Melvin unleashed a more powerful aura, declaring that he would show him a true sword skill. Overwhelmed, he collapsed from Melvin's strike. Melvin remarked that it was just a glimpse of his true strength, knowing that he had held back. Recalling that Count Melvin, a formidable 5th County Lord, had passed away before the events of the Connect world began, resulting in the rapid decline of the county, he understood the importance of his father staying alive and meeting Melvin's expectations. As he left, he vowed to become stronger and protect his family, refusing to suffer defeat. Meanwhile, in the castle, Melvin watched him depart and called out his name, reminiscing about their time in the training grounds. Melvin had asked him how many times he had tried and told him to give up, but he was impressed by Raul's unwavering determination. Melvin smiled, acknowledging that Rul had grown beyond being a mere child and had become a proud swordsman. Melvin expressed his admiration for Raul's persistence, exclaiming with enthusiasm that it was a testament to the dignity of the Ashton family. As their battle continued, Rul charged forward with his sword, while his father paused, assuming a stance and commanding Rul to attack him. However, Melvin was taken aback when he noticed the trajectory of Raul's sword suddenly changing. Confused by the alteration in Raul's attack, Melvin was grazed on the face. With a serious expression, Raul believed that even with his psychokinetic ability, he could only leave a minor wound. In that moment, Melvin suddenly acknowledged that it was time to recognize Raul as no longer a child, but as a proud swordsman. Returning to reality, Melvin urged Raul to venture out and experience the world. The group eventually stopped in a forest to rest, and he inquired about their distance from their destination. Philip, a 42-year-old knight with a level of 92 and various titles and affiliations, provided the information. They were 5 days away at their current speed. Philip suggested increasing their pace, but he explained that they needed to train the soldiers as well, so they should maintain their current speed. He believed that the selected group of 50 people, including knights, trainees, and cavalry, were skilled enough to bolster their strength and prevent further decline. Jake informed him that the carriage maintenance was complete, and they could continue their journey. Impressed by Jake's work, he praised him and dismissed any doubts about the number of people accompanying them, stating that they would understand the purpose once they arrived. He knew the reason for taking them to the free city Mira, one of the first cities players visited after completing the tutorial. Mira was known for its abundance of quests, hidden items, and mana usage. Limitations to ensure beginners were not overwhelmed. Moreover, the city boasted infinite resources, driving players to flock there. God's Domain, an area filled with monsters for players to level up, was the primary attraction that led him to choose Mira as their destination. He brought the knights to the grinding zone to expedite their leveling process. He believed it was a perfect plan. To his surprise, the system notification appeared, announcing the update and the unlocking of new features in the Connect community. The guild category and 2 new quests, Adventure and Skill Collector, had been registered. It amazed him that a new quest had already appeared upon entering Mira. He had thought he wouldn't be able to access any additional features until the official launch, but it seemed he could unlock more by meeting certain requirements. Someone knocked on the carriage door, and Jake informed him that he could meet the mayor immediately. Asked about his preference, he replied that he would, of course, meet the mayor. Meanwhile, in the main castle, Mayor Raldo of the Free City Mira inquired about the visitor. His butler confirmed that Rul Ashton, the youngest son of County Ashton, had arrived with a group of 50 people. Raldo wondered if Raul was there for the fresh air, assuming he might be seeking respite due to his reputation for weakness. He instructed his butler to let them in, as Raul's family made good money from monster materials, and he intended to extract some funds from him. The butler acknowledged the order. A moment later, Raul opened the door and greeted Raldo gracefully. Raldo warmly welcomed him, expressing sincere appreciation for his visit to Free City Mira. They shook hands, and Raul thanked him while taking a seat as instructed. However, Raul sensed insincerity in Raldo's demeanor, noticing the forced smile on his face. Raldo inquired about the purpose of Raul's visit to Mira, and Raul replied that he had heard it was an excellent training location. Raldo affirmed that it was indeed a safe place for training, but Raul insisted that it couldn't be an ordinary place. He requested permission to enter the cursed forest, shocking Raldo. Raldo warned him that it was too dangerous, especially for someone weak, but then clarified that he meant it was suitable for younger individuals. Raul confirmed his expectations and hinted that he might have to discard the 500,000 gold he had planned to offer Raldo as a gratuity. This revelation left Raldo even more astonished, as he observed the significant sum of gold before him. Reacting quickly, Raldo grabbed the bag of gold, explaining that he was joking and that he would indeed grant Raul permission to enter the forest. He smiled and acknowledged Raldo's generosity, confident that he would grind and claim all the rewards to ascend to the top of Connect. Upon arriving at Free City Mira, he walked the streets with Jake and Philip, deep in thought. He contemplated that Mira was designed as a living space for Connect players, but due to it being a closed beta and only him and Rul Ashton being present, the city faced a crisis. He noted the abundance of accommodations, large stores, and oversized guild buildings that were disproportionate to the number of residents. The lower demand caused land prices to drop. However, his true motive for coming to Mira was real estate related. He believed that if he acquired inexpensive land in Mira, it would eventually be utilized for constructing luxury houses for nobles, guild houses for players, and apartments for regular residents. He foresaw that in the future, the value of those lands would increase by more than 100 times their current price. He also remembered that during past wars, Mira, a city favored by the gods, served as a perfect shelter. He recalled that in his previous life, money could be made by simply lending land, but he felt that it was insufficient given the upcoming war and potential risks. He acknowledged that he couldn't compete with their financial power in his previous life, but he believed this time would be different. Interrupting his thoughts, Jake nervously asked if he just needed to sign there, calling his name while he observed Jake's hesitation. Angrily, he ordered Jake to simply sign the documents, but Jake expressed caution, citing his mother's advice about being careful when signing papers. Eventually, the lady collected the documents and informed them that a total of 51 people, including himself, had registered for the guild. He realized that he had created the first guild in a world without players, making it the most advanced guild. He looked at his companions, knowing that as guild members, they would receive assistance from the system, and he anticipated the bewildered expressions on their faces. Meanwhile, Jake worried that his mother would reprimand him later. At the Battle Association's Mira branch office, he exclaimed that he was next. The lady welcomed him and asked how she could assist him. He replied that he wanted to see some skill books and inquired about the highest rank available. Skill books contained various skills that could be learned by carefully reading them. The lady informed him that their branch office offered skill books up to rank Y, but rank Y skill books were exclusive to VIP customers. Curious about VIP requirements, he learned that VIP status could be attained through contributions to the association, completing quests, or making significant purchases. However, to accumulate purchases, a substantial amount of money had to be spent. He placed a bag of gold on the table and commented that it wasn't much, asking to see the rank Y skill books. The lady happily asked which line of skill books he would like to see, such as sword, bow, magic, or shield. He smiled and replied that he wanted to see all of them. Jake commented on the weight of the books, suggesting that they might not need all of them. However, he assured them that the books would advance them to a higher level and instructed them to be patient, as they would understand the next day. Later, he arrived at his apartment room and beheld the multitude of books before him, realizing that perhaps he had acquired too many. He understood that there were limits on the number of skills players could use, so normally they couldn't utilize a wide range of skills. He opened his quest window, recalling the 2 unknown items in his inventory when he woke up in Raul's body. He had attempted to open them before but was unsuccessful. However, after receiving the quest the previous day, he finally managed to use those items. He accessed his inventory and discovered that one of the items was the sealed skill dex. This led him to speculate that the reward for completing the quest was the activation of the skill dex. Examining the system, he noticed that the quest collector had an unknown grade and a description instructing him to collect at least 10 skill books and register them in the skill dex, with additional rewards based on the type of skill books. The completion reward was activation of the skill dex, with an extra reward of unlocking traits and acquiring skills. Realizing that he needed to open the skill dex and place the skill books inside, he grabbed a few books. To his surprise, the deck book began moving on its own as he attempted to register the books, emitting a strong purple light that flew into the other book. Words appeared from the deck book, causing him to release the other book he was holding in astonishment. He observed that the sliver of mana in the book had disappeared and realized that it would take a long time to register all the skill books individually. Wondering if there was a way to register them all at once, the books suddenly flew up in the air, shocking him. Once again, a powerful purple light emerged from the deck book and flew towards the books before they fell to the ground. With the registration process complete, he flipped through the pages of the deck book, amazed that it worked. The system indicated that he had successfully completed the quest, resulting in the activation of his rare skill dex. As an additional reward, his trait, Skill Collector, had been unlocked at grade 10, and he had acquired the Copycat skill at grade S. Examining the Skill Collector, he learned that it activated the skill deck, while the Copycat skill slightly increased the chance of acquiring skills from examined opponents. Clicking on the Copycat skill, he discovered that its mastery level was beginner level 3 and that it allowed him to steal skills from opponents and register them in the decks. As his mastery level increased, he could acquire higher ranked skills and enhance the power of the stolen skills. He considered it overpowered since he could now use someone else's skills. The system revealed that the skill decks were of rare grade and upgradable, and they were replicas of the legendary mythic item, Skill Dex, which stored records of ancient skills. These records would reset when crossing dimensions, and the deck would regain its true power after meeting special requirements. Currently, it recorded 525 skills. He recognized it as the mythical item he had received just before he died. While some aspects of his past life, like his psychokinesis trait and certain items, had carried over, his skills were reset, and this skill deck was a replica. He also noticed that the only remaining unknown items in his inventory were the 3 grade 10 traits and 1 item, leaving him curious about their power. The following day, the knights were shocked by the appearance of the system and panicked, seeking answers about the status window in the guild chat. They exclaimed that they needed to consult a priest. On the other hand, the butler greeted him, and he returned the gaze with tired eyes. He had been unable to sleep all night due to his engrossment in reading through the skill decks. He greeted Bernard and inquired if he had explained everything to the others, to which Bernard confirmed that he had followed the instructions. Excitedly, he asked Bernard about the skill book and if he had tried it himself. Bernard nodded in agreement. He was aware that Bernard served the Ashton family and was Ivan's stepson. Bernard had been working for the county since a young age and was personally taught by Ivan. Not only did Bernard have an exceptional memory, but he also completed tasks quickly. However, there was another reason why he had chosen Bernard. To his surprise, Bernard released a gust of wind from his hand, prompting him to exclaim with amazement. He informed Bernard that he knew he possessed such abilities, recognizing that Bernard had the power to control the wind. Bernard gracefully acknowledged the compliment. According to the system, Bernard was 27 years old, at level 21, with classes in Servant Beginner and Windwalker. His affiliations included Ashton County and the First Guild. Bernard's talents encompassed administration management and wind power. He had an A-grade potential talent in the following stats: 17 strength, 18 agility, 24 stamina, 53 intelligence, 46 willpower, 23 spiritual power, and 41 senses. His unique traits were Sharp Manager, Cold Head, and Like the Wind. While Bernard might have lacked in certain stats, he possessed great talent as a servant or in a supporting role. Having completed his preparations, he instructed Bernard to get ready. Confused, Bernard asked for what purpose, and he replied that they were leaving as soon as the knights were accustomed to it, heading towards God's domain, the Cursed Forest. Later, within the Cursed Forest, an ogre launched its axe in an attempt to attack him, causing the ground to shatter in the process. However, he skillfully evaded the attack and remarked to the ogre that it was too slow. Subsequently, he delivered a punch, but before it connected with the ogre's head, the ogre exploded. He swiftly dropped to the ground as the ogre's body collapsed and called out to the others to reveal their presence. Suddenly, a swarm of ogres emerged from hiding, shouting that he was a formidable human who needed to be killed. The ogre leader rallied the group and ordered them to charge, prompting the ogres to run towards him in an attempt to attack. Unfazed, he positioned himself confidently and urged them to bring it on. He explained that the Cursed Forest, within God's domain, was more than just a grinding zone, it encompassed the entire city of Mira. In this city, players would be healed if injured and revived if they died, making it the ultimate sanctuary. Furthermore, within the forest, the blessing only applied to monsters, meaning their numbers remained constant even after being killed. However, humans couldn't be revived in the Cursed Forest and were unable to carry the items obtained from hunting monsters beyond its borders. If they attempted to do so, the items would turn to ashes and disappear. This restriction was in place to ensure that they did not tamper with the belongings of the gods. Nevertheless, this rule only applied to civilians, as players were allowed to take items acquired from monsters outside the forest with the assistance of the system. Philip interrupted, asking Jake why he was talking when their young master was the one engaged in battle. Meanwhile, he was busy fighting the ogres. As the leader of the ogres remained the sole adversary left standing, the leader inquired about the power he possessed. In response, he employed his telekinetic abilities to raise the weapons scattered on the ground and directed them towards the leader. Astonished, the leader was swiftly cut into pieces by the flying weapons. He explained that this power was called psychokinesis. Together with Jake, he acknowledged that it was a useful ability, but Philip urged Jake to cease talking and continue skinning the ogres. Jake sighed, expressing his disappointment at having come all the way to Mira for such tasks. He explained that he had expected better progress from their training. While he was busy collecting the ogres' blood, called out to them and thanked everyone for their help, acknowledging that their collective effort had made them stronger. He mentioned the importance of studying the skill books, which contributed to their growth. Philip agreed, thinking that Raul was right, and recalled his own success in using Susan's skill to defeat an ogre. Raul asked for their feedback and explained that he had brought skill books instead of power armor for this reason. Jake responded with amazement, acknowledging the effectiveness of the skill books. Philip marveled at Jake's quick acquisition of a new skill and wondered how Raul had discovered this strange ability. Just then, the system displayed the guild chat, catching Philip's attention. He urged Raul to look at the chat, but upon seeing Raul's reaction, he became enraged. Raul confirmed that he had seen it too and declared that they were returning to Mira immediately. Meanwhile, in an alley in Myra, someone threatened one of Raul's men with a sword, criticizing him for not acting sooner. The individual stabbed Raul's man, claiming that he had struggled to hold back after seeing Ashton's children wandering around. Another person, holding a bloodied sword, referred to the first man as his brother and stated that they should have listened to him earlier. He proceeded to stab another one of Raul's men. Confused, one of Raul's men asked why they were doing this, but the other man slashed him with the sword, remarking that they should have heeded their great-grandfather's advice about being cautious. The attacker, named Ramon, was the first son of Viscount Randall. The man called Jerry, who held the bloody sword, referred to Ramon as his brother and mentioned that they should have taken care of Raul's child in a similar manner. Kale, another man present, reminded Jerry that noble families were not supposed to harm each other in the free city. Ramon dismissed Kale's concerns, suggesting that they could deny their involvement and questioned what Raul could do about it. Ramon proposed the idea of crushing the Ashton family, speculating that their great-grandfather might even praise them. However, Raymond's head suddenly exploded, leaving his brothers shocked. Raul appeared, asking them how dare they and stating that their offense towards Ashton County would require more than just their deaths. The brothers looked at Raul in surprise, with Jerry questioning his sanity and expressing shock that he had harmed a member of the Randall family. Kale questioned the inaction of the knights and how Raul had managed to arrive at the scene. One of the knights, with a sword pressed against his neck, fearfully responded that they were the primary force of the Ashton family. Meanwhile, Philip and Jake aimed their swords at the knights. Philip reported to Raul that they had successfully surrounded the Randall knights as instructed and ensured that no civilians were nearby. Bernard and Jake stood in silence, observing the enemy. Raul commended their excellent work and used his psychokinesis to lift his injured men from the ground, slowly levitating them in the air. He then commanded Bernard to take the injured men to the shrine, to which Bernard respectfully agreed. Raul proceeded to retrieve his sword from his inventory, declaring that he would personally take care of the enemies. Raul knew that the Randall Viscounty, like the Ashton County, was one of the 5 warrior families in the Reuben Kingdom. However, unlike the long-standing history of the Ashton family, the Randall family had a relatively shorter history. The 5 warrior families were reorganized when the current lord of the Randall family, Vice Hudson D. Randall, reached the Sword Master stage. Being a family with a shorter history, the Randalls had to find various ways to secure their position. They consistently produced exceptional knights, made significant contributions, and triumphed over their opponents. Their target in this conflict was Ashton County, which had lost its power due to the absence of a sword master for a long time. Since the Ashton family had limited political influence, there was no risk in provoking them. Most conflicts between these families throughout the kingdom had been initiated by the Randall family, and it was widely expected that the Randall Viscounty would emerge victorious due to their numerous sword masters. Jerry, who was observing Raul, was intrigued by his unusual strength and noticed that Raul had seemingly conjured a sword out of thin air. The knight behind Jerry, who had a sword pointed at him by Philip, cautiously reached for his own sword. However, Raul anticipated the move in time and swiftly turned around, swinging his sword and striking the knight, causing him to cry out in pain. The Randall knights were taken aback by this display, and Jake calmly sheathed his sword, stating that their young master had promised to handle the situation himself. He ordered his men to lower their weapons. One of the strong knights from the Randall family observed this and questioned their sanity, believing it would be better to fight. Kale, furious, charged towards Raul, asking if he intended to face them alone. He swung his massive mace backward to gather force, warning Raul that this was not mere training. However, before Kale could attack, a swift sword slash cut him in half, causing him to scream in pain. Jerry called out Kale's name in distress, berating the knights for their inaction. Feeling frustrated, their leader reluctantly drew his sword, realizing that he had to take action. He explained that he had hesitated because he didn't want to bully a 15-year-old, but the situation had changed when his comrades began to fall. The system displayed his name as Jeremy, a 37-year-old leader of the Guard Knights and a beginner sword expert affiliated with the Randall Viscounty. Jeremy's potential talent was graded as B, and his attributes included strength 66, agility 72, stamina 68, intelligence 48, willpower 63, mana 70, senses 55, and a unique trait of greater brutality compared to other knights. Other knights also raised their swords, indicating that they were the elite members of the Randall family. Jeremy and the knights had their swords aimed at him. He knew that Jeremy's level was 65, and the other elite knights were each at level 60. However, his current level was only 45, so he understood that he couldn't win against them in a fair fight. One of the knights asked why he didn't give up now, thinking he had done enough, while another knight remarked that they had let him be, but not anymore. They didn't care that he was a young master, they were determined to defeat him. Surprising the knight, he suddenly appeared in front of him, swiftly slashing his body. He tightly gripped the knight's sword and raised it backward, gathering force. Utilizing his bear aura, he attacked them with his bear strike skill. One of the knights questioned what he was doing, but he simply slashed the man's stomach, causing him to bleed and shout in pain. Jeremy then leapt towards him, catching him off guard, but the man managed to block Jeremy's attack in time, though it pushed him back. Jeremy asked the knight if he was okay, and the frightened man replied that he was fine. Jeremy couldn't believe that two of his elite knights had been defeated so easily. He recalled hearing rumors that Rul was weak and inexperienced with swordplay. Determined to prove the rumors wrong, Jeremy drew his second weapon and declared that he was different. He pointed his sword at Jeremy, challenging him to bring it on. Noticing Jeremy holding a parrying dagger and a rapier, he wondered if Jeremy was using a sword skill unique to the Randall Viscounty called Shooting Star. Jeremy smiled and complimented his bravery, asking if he knew that every wound healed in a mirror. He explained that he couldn't fight them all alone, but Jeremy retorted, claiming that he was the one confused. He bet that Jeremy and his knights hadn't even trained since arriving in the area. Surprised, Jeremy asked how he knew, but he simply replied that the trembling soldiers over there, even after their wounds had healed, were evidence of their lack of familiarity with death. Jeremy realized that his opponent not only understood combat but could see through everything, making him a threat. He ordered his man to cover him from the back, and the man assured Jeremy that he would handle it. Suddenly, Jeremy leapt forward and launched his sword at him. He defended himself with his own sword, and Jeremy, along with his comrade, relentlessly attacked him, slashing his face, arms, and every part of his body. Another soldier saw an opportunity and rushed forward to attack, causing Jeremy to shout for his man to stop. However, he swung his sword, cutting the man in half. Jeremy called his man a fool but knew there was no time to waste. He activated his Randall sword vision skill and unleashed the shooting star skill, surprising his opponent for a moment. Yet, he managed to block it using his psychokinesis, determined to keep up the fight. He wondered how his struggling even with psychokinesis, but he knew he had to persist. As he pressed Jeremy backward, glaring at him, Jeremy became enraged and shouted, questioning his arrogant eyes. He coolly replied, stating that he was at 100%. Confused, Jeremy asked him what he meant, but without hesitation, he swung his sword forward, causing Jeremy to throw his weapons in the air. He quickly looked up to see his weapons, pierced his sword into the ground, and the system indicated that his opponent's skill examination had been 100% completed, with the copycat skill ready for use. Then, the system displayed instructions for him to copy the exact moves using the copycat skill, engraving the skill into his skill decks. Utilizing his psychokinesis, the weapons flew directly into his hands while the system guided him to activate the copycat skill for Randall's sword skill, Shooting Star, at grade B. Angered, he activated the skill, pointing the weapons at Jeremy, and unleashed the Shooting Star skill, attacking Jeremy in return. Jeremy was shocked and asked how he accomplished it, recognizing that it was undoubtedly Shooting Star. Jeremy attempted to defend against the attack with his arms, experiencing pain and shouting, questioning who had betrayed them and revealing Raul's involvement in that sword skill. Despite being continuously struck by the Shooting Star skill, he suddenly appeared beneath Jeremy and informed him that he had taught himself. Confused, Jeremy asked what he meant, but he swiftly stabbed Jeremy in the side and withdrew the sword, causing Jeremy to kneel on the ground. The system displayed that he had received a rank bonus for Randall's sword skill, Shooting Star, reaching Grade B Mastery at Intermediate Level 1. He had successfully engraved the Shooting Star skill into his skill dex. The system instructed him to equip the skill in the skill dex selection slot to continuously use Randall's sword skill, Shooting Star, at Grade B. Looking at Jeremy, he believed it was over and acknowledged the difficulty of using the copycat skill due to its overpowering nature. He understood that copycat was a skill he learned with the skill dex, allowing him to copy the opponent's skill, but only one skill at a time. He couldn't lose sight of the target once the skill was activated, as the examination rate would reset if he did. That's why he didn't even blink when facing Jeremy's attacks. Additionally, it was impossible to steal a skill unless it was a one-on-one fight. He opened his display skill, and the system showed him his default skills: Ashton Vision Sword Skill, Bear Crush at Grade A+, Intermediate Level 2, Psychokinesis at Grade S, Intermediate Level 2, Mind Skill at Grade A, Intermediate Level 1, Copycat at Grade S, Beginner Level 6, and Basic Meditation at Grade E, Beginner Level 8. His skill deck selection slots contained Flash and Shield, both at Grade C, Beginner Level 6. Finally, his skill deck's random slot was Iron Fist at Grade D, Intermediate Level 1. He appreciated his skill dex since he could use 3 more skills, and the selection slots allowed him to freely use 2 registered skills. He decided to use the skill there, but then he heard something by his side, causing him to look in confusion. Jerry fearfully asked him who he was and how he used the Randall sword skill. However, he simply informed Jerry that he was still there because he had forgotten about him. He ordered Philip to kill them every time they revived for an hour. Philip respectfully agreed and asked his men if they had heard their young master, to which they immediately agreed to carry out the order. Jerry pleaded with Philip for forgiveness, expressing fear, but Philip simply stared at them, contemplating the concept of blood for blood. In that moment, the enemy screamed in pain, and he realized that this was not a fictional world or a game, but the harsh reality that confronted him. He understood that he had to do everything in his power to avoid losing again, even if it meant wading through a pool of blood. He was determined not to be defeated. On the other hand, Raldo, who observed the events from a distance, wondered what was happening. He recalled that according to the plan, when the henchmen of Viscount Randall attacked Raul, he was supposed to benefit from the situation by mobilizing the guards for assistance. However, Raul single-handedly defeated 15 knights. Suddenly, Raul looked in his direction, causing Raldo to panic and wonder how Raul had discovered his involvement. Raldo also contemplated the possibility that Raul was not just a wealthy and attractive pushover. He considered the idea that Raul might be a hidden sword master from Ashton County. If that were the case, Raul must have also uncovered all of his plans. Raldo composed himself and realized that he would need to establish a friendly relationship with Ashton County in the future. A few minutes later, Raul was in his room, reflecting that he may have gone a bit overboard. However, the rewards he received were quite substantial. He glanced at the system, which displayed the results of his sudden quest, the Rival Family Challenge. He noticed that he had successfully completed the rescue and punishment objectives, earning him a reward of 30,000 experience points, coins, and a random B-grade skillbook draw ticket. Additionally, he received around 5,000 gold, a space-expanding magic bag capable of holding a large amount of luggage, and a unique grade rapier and main go set from the Scoundrels of Randall County. Raul seized the ticket, remarking that the B-grade skillbook draw ticket was particularly appealing, and he found it ridiculous to even consider receiving all flunks from the tournament skillbook reward. He placed the ticket on the table and expressed his desire for something decent, preferably a mid-tier skill book this time. With a prayer that it wouldn't turn out to be a disappointment, he broke the ticket in half. To his surprise, a bright light emanated from the ticket, revealing that he had obtained a skill book called Rivera Spearman's Ship, of Grade B. Overwhelmed with joy, he shouted in excitement, knowing that Spearman's Ship was a crucial skill for his upcoming journey to the capital. He believed that his luck was favoring him. He realized that there was one more important task he needed to accomplish in Miran, and he was willing to invest a month there to ensure success. A week later, he found himself in the forest, launching his sword at an ogre in front of him. Wiping off his sweat, the system notified him that he had leveled up to level 51 and had reached the required level for promotion. Now he had to decide on a possible promotion. The system confirmed his job as a sword user and beginner psychokinetic. His proficiency in job-related skills, including Ashton family hereditary swordsmanship, Randall swordsmanship, and psychokinesis, had reached a mid-level. He had met the requirements for promotion, resulting in his job changing from a sword user to a sword expert and from a beginner psychokinetic to an intermediate psychokinetic. Philip praised him, calling it amazing, while Jake exclaimed that it was awesome for him to become a sword expert at such a young age. He raised his hand, causing the stones on the ground to levitate, and then swung his hand forward, commanding the stones to strike a huge tree, shattering it into pieces. Pulling out his sword, he leapt forward and unleashed a bear strike, causing the ground to shatter. Surveying the cracked and destroyed ground, he asked his companions if it should be like this. Philip commended him, stating that it was wonderful, as expected from their young master. Jake playfully asked if he could now do it without their assistance. Jake then suggested taking a break and relaxing, but Philip grabbed Jake's ear tightly and questioned what he meant by relaxation. He reminded Jake to consider how much sleep he needed to catch up with Raul. Jake insisted it was just a joke and awkwardly laughed, acknowledging Raul's hard work. Raul made it clear that he had no intention of taking a break yet. Philip asked him what he would like to do, and Jake suggested contacting the family, as Count Melvin would be thrilled. Raul replied that he would inform his family personally later and proposed keeping it a secret between the two of them for now, to which they both agreed. Raul knew that he had hunted enough monsters and sufficiently leveled up. Meanwhile, Philip scolded Jake for his words, making Jake pout and ask Philip what he meant. Raul realized that he had set the bait, and now it was up to the prey to take it. He urged them to return, and they agreed, walking away while Raul urged the Empire's dogs to move quickly in his mind. Meanwhile, in the bustling streets of Mira, a lady named Nikia, an alchemist, stretched her body, signaling the end of her work for the day. She noticed the increasing popularity of potions and wondered if it was thanks to Ashton County, who had brought the necessary monster byproducts for their production. Obtaining these byproducts had been challenging for her in the past, as monsters rarely appeared in the cursed forest. However, now that the people of Ashton County had started providing them, she was able to produce potions daily. Not only that, but the county's residents would visit her shop every morning, showing concern for her well-being and asking if she needed anything. Stepping out of the store, she couldn't help but find Raul a bit peculiar, but she felt grateful to him. She also couldn't deny that Raul was good-looking. Blushing and slapping her face, she scolded herself for her thoughts, reminding herself that Raul was only 15 years old and 8 years younger than her. Her shy behavior drew strange looks from the people around her. Moments later, she arrived at her house, excitedly calling out for her sister, Nikki. However, there was no response, causing her to worry. Searching the house, she discovered a letter on the bed, pierced by a knife. As she read the letter, fear washed over her. It revealed that her little sister had been taken, and she was instructed not to tell anyone and to await further instructions. Overwhelmed with sadness and concern, she cried out, realizing the urgency of the situation. She knew that Nikki's life was in danger if she didn't act quickly.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for more content. Feel free to leave a comment down below sharing your thoughts or suggestions. If you want to stay updated on all our latest uploads, click the notification bell icon. And hey, why not check out some of our other videos popping up on the screen right now? If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really means a lot. Peace.